It's the engine that's burning inside. We're breaking down the walls in your head, leaving all your doubts for dead. It's time to come alive, Sport Rewired. Come on, Sport Rewired.
The Formula One Silverstone Grand Prix weekend, the world watched a world champion dramatically spin out of the race. It wasn't just a failure of mechanical parts, and it wasn't a sudden loss of driving talent. That was a demonstration of a human nervous system hitting the red line. Today, we are getting into the cockpit and into the mind of a Formula One driver. Welcome to episode 2 of Sport Rewired. I'm your host, Grant Wyeth. If you tuned into the first episode, welcome back. I'm overcome actually by how fast our community is growing, and I know how many of you have been looking forward to this episode specifically from some of the comments I've been receiving. If you're joining in for the first time, I'm a hypnotherapist studying the precise mechanics of the mind and how we can systematically rewire our psychological patterns to achieve peak performance. We are looking at professional sports not just as entertainment, but as to observe exactly how the human mind handles immense pressure. More importantly, we break down those observations into practical, actionable frameworks that you can apply directly to your own life. The response to the pilot has been nothing short of phenomenal. And I just wanted to take a quick moment to say thank you to everyone who took the time to listen, share, and leave a review. This week, we are moving from the football pitch straight into the high-velocity, high-data world for the Formula One paddock. The current 2026 season is turning out to be a brilliant, fascinating study into performance psychology. We're going to examine 3 different drivers on the grid to showcase different angles of the mental game. So today we're going to look into why a 19-year-old rookie is handling one of the most high-pressure seats in sports history with a remarkably relaxed and grounded attitude. We will then shift to the GOAT, Lewis Hamilton, breaking down the specific team leadership skills, trust, and analytical calm that have allowed him to excel under hyper-complex new formula of cars. And finally, you will circle back to Max Verstappen to dissect exactly how unmanaged tension, frustration, anger can lead to a destructive pattern in your life, and exactly what a hypnotherapist would do to fix it. We have a lot to unpack today, so let's get straight into the wiring. Let's start with the driver dominating the Formula One conversations right now, Mercedes' young sensation Kimi Antonelli. Stepping into a top-tier Formula One seat at just 19 years old brings an immense, almost unimaginable amount of pressure. Every minor mistake is broadcast globally to an audience of millions in ultra-high definition, and the scrutiny from the media is relentless, let alone the Netflix Drive to Survive cameras. But what stands out most when you observe Antonelli closely isn't just his raw pace or his talent. It is his visible, relaxed demeanour. Next time you watch Formula One, just watch him in the garage before a qualifying session, during his interviews, or whenever you listen to his team race radio communications. He's carrying out a genuine sense of joy into every single part of his race career. He's driving with a completely clear mind. Remarkably, the sudden wave of global success, attention, and hype hasn't altered his attitude. He remains completely grounded, treating each event with the same consistent, level-headed approach. From a clinical perspective, what we are witnessing here is a perfect example of peak automaticity. Because he is young, and his rise has been so rapid, his mind is unburdened by failure at the highest level. He doesn't carry years of political F1 frustration or the traumatic memory of driving uncompetitive machinery. Most crucially, because recent success hasn't changed his attitude, it tells us that his state of mind has not attached itself to results. He isn't driving to protect a massive reputation, nor is he operating out of fear of losing his status. He is driving out of pure execution. This lack of self-referential overthinking means he experiences zero cognitive friction. His analytical part of his brain isn't getting in the way of his motor reflexes, allowing his trained competence to handle the car seamlessly at high speeds and thrive under the latest set of regulations for the drivers. This is a powerful reminder that when you preserve a sense of personal joy, the performance largely handles itself. Now let's look at a completely different angle of high performance by shifting our focus to Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton is in a unique position right now where he's routinely going up against highly talented, physically at the top of their game drivers who are more than a decade younger than him. But what makes him stand out so distinctly with this specific formula of cars isn't just raw reflexes. It is his exceptionally high level of cognitive efficiency. We have to look at how complicated the current set of regulations actually are under the skin. The modern hybrid power units require constant active management from the cockpit. Drivers aren't just steering around apexes. They are managing complex energy systems, deciding exactly when to deploy manual boost overrides, and manually adjusting active aerodynamics between cornering and straight line phases. If a driver gets bogged down trying to calculate all of these engineering variables while simultaneously racing wheel to wheel, they can experience cognitive overload. Their working memory redlines. Their physical reaction time slowed down simply because their conscious brain is too busy doing the math. What makes Hamilton so incredibly effective in this current environment is his ability to maintain an analytical, calm mind under intense pressure. He drives these hyper-complex cars exactly like he has managed his entire career at the peak of his powers. Always thinking, always calculating, and constantly looking for ways to extract the absolute best out of his system. Through clinical studies and human performance, you quickly realize that technical skill is only half the equation. Underneath the telemetry, trust, expectancy, and belief are not just abstract concepts. They are the primary cognitive drivers that determine whether we succeed or collapse under pressure. These three elements form the absolute bedrock of what we call the working alliance with the therapist. The T.E.A.M model stands for trust, expectation, attitude, and motivation. When you look at Lewis Hamilton's resurgence with Ferrari, you're watching a masterclass in these benefits playing out in real time with his team. So let's look at the T.E.A.M model, starting with trust. In clinical practice, trust is the essential bond in the model of the working alliance, sitting alongside an explicit agreement on goals and tasks. Hamilton has worked so hard to build a foundation of mutual trust with his engineers at Ferrari after a bumpy start to his career there. This trust facilitates immense emotional depth and focus. When a driver trusts his team, and when the team trusts his driver, they are far more willing to explore the protected recesses of their own experience and push the absolute limits of the car. Furthermore, a driver's trust in their own team directly builds self-acceptance and self-trust. When Hamilton trusts his own reflexes and his own ability to respond to a changing track and changing conditions, he develops the high self-efficacy needed to make lasting performance changes. From a therapy standpoint, this high level of rapport drastically reduces internal resistance. It ensures that critical operational feedback and tactical suggestions are accepted by his brain more readily, with far less conscious analysis or interference getting in the way of his driving. Second, we look at expectancy, which researchers like Irving Kirsch refer to as the non-deceptive mega placebo. Response expectancy is perhaps the single most important factor in how the human mind responds to a suggestion or high-pressure stimulus. Expectancy can create self-fulfilling prophecies, both good and bad. Because Hamilton steps into the garage expecting a specific positive outcome from a setup or a strategy shift, that exact expectation triggers the actual physiological and psychological response within his body. Research suggests that a massive percentage of the client's actual relief or breakthrough is directly attributable to the sheer expectation of their own success. Finally, we have attitude and motivation. In the cognitive behavioral model, belief is viewed as an internal rule that governs a person's entire map of the world. Following Albert Bandura's foundational psychological theories, an individual's belief in their own personal competence, their self-efficacy, is the most reliable predictor of their actual performance and their persistence in the face of immense challenges. By anchoring a positive belief during preparation, the absolute conviction that he can get the most out of his machinery, rather than a desperate feeling that he must force it to work. Hamilton's brain moves from an external operator of strict necessity to an internal operator of pure possibility. This reduces internal psychological conflict, and it triggers a profound biological transformation. Deep belief in your own capability produces measurable physiological changes, directly regulating heart rate, reducing somatic tremors, and buffering the body's stress responses during periods of intense pressure. He believes Ferrari can deliver him another world title. If you watch the pre-race coverage on a Sunday afternoon, or peer into the pitch during a tense qualifying session, you will often see a driver sitting completely still in their cockpit with their eyes closed. Their hands might even be raised slightly in the air as if they're holding a wheel, making tiny rhythmic movements as if they are turning that wheel in real time, perfectly mimicking the exact sequence of corners on the track. Now, to a casual viewer, this looks like simple rehearsal. What these drivers are doing natively is running the track in their mind play by play. They're visualizing themselves driving into the first corner. They've already nailed their launch. They're hitting all their braking zones precisely and selecting the right gears. The underlying science of why this native visualization works is incredibly robust. And in actual fact, this is a form of self-hypnosis. According to psychoneuromuscular theory, simply imagining a physical activity duplicates the exact motor pattern in the brain's motor cortex, creating literal muscle memory without moving a single limb. This is supported by symbolic learning theory, which states that rehearsal acts as a cognitive blueprint, allowing the brain to practice the symbolic and strategic components of an activity. Ultimately, as Albert Bandura established, this form of imaginal mastery is a powerful channel for increasing an individual's self-efficacy. Drivers instinctively follow strict parameters. They use multi-sensory engagement, incorporating visual, auditory, and physical cues, and they maintain real-time pacing in their own mind, running the mental lap at the exact split-second speed that they wished on the asphalt. Let's take a deep clinical look at what is happening now with Max Verstappen. His recent track performance at Silverstone and other races this season, particularly recent races, provide a flawless case study for an emotional trap that catches athletes and corporate leaders alike. When we break down anger, we conceptualize it as a tripartite experience, meaning it hits the individual in three distinct phases: a cognitive perception of trespass, a physiological mobilization for assault, and a behavioral attack. When you look at Max's statements and team radio traces across the British Grand Prix weekend, you can track this psychological descent step by step. First, let's look at the perception of trespass. Before the cars even touched the asphalt at Silverstone, Max's map of the world was already locked into a rigid, resistant framework regarding the current set of regulations. Reflecting on his preparation, he admitted, and I quote, "I did a few laps on the simulator, and I just started laughing. It felt like a different track, to be honest. You barely have battery around the lap. It's just constantly flat. It simply wasn't designed for this engine formula." By Thursday's media session, that rigidity was hardening, and he said, "Some corners are completely different compared to last year, and that makes it a bit less exciting." In his mind, the regulations weren't just a technical shift. They were a literal trespass against this established domain of performance. This perception of trespass immediately rolled into the second phase, a physiological mobilization for assault, driven by the sympathetic nervous system. When an athlete operates from this state of chronic frustration, the body enters into a rigid fight-or-flight response. Your heart rate spikes, blood pressure elevates, and micromuscular tremors creep in. We saw this internal tension manifest as extreme cognitive rigidity after a difficult qualifying session, when Max qualified nearly 8 tenths off the pace, and tried to force the team to break Parc Fermé rules. He stated flatly, "It's just not going forward. It's just not putting the same. There is a clear problem, and that's something that also worries me for tomorrow, because there's actually no point to race like this." He even told the Dutch media, "If we leave the car the same, there is little point in racing. I prefer to change everything." Walking to the grid on Sunday, the internal division was total. And he said, "Ask the team why we didn't change the car, as I would have done it differently." He was gritting his teeth before the lights even went out. Once the visor went down, that physiological mobilization directly dictated the third phase, the behavioral attack. For a racing driver, this attack manifests as a high arousal, overdriving, and lashing out verbally. The untelevised team radio reveals a mind drowning in the emotional fog of war, where every engineering variable is interpreted as a personal assault. By lap 10, he was already projecting blame. And I quote, "Yeah, we should have just done what I said yesterday. I'd have easily got to this place. I cannot adjust, mate. The car's so unbalanced." By the next lap, the physical tension was audibly creeping into his inputs. And he said, "Already for a few laps now, I haven't said anything, but the downshifts are so," and I will say poo, to replace what Max has said there. By lap 22, when the hybrid battery loops peaked in complexity, his nervous system boiled over entirely. And they said, I quote, "Mate, my engine again, no response, and now my whole battery is dead." And I will use a more polite word than what he's used, "fudge sake. We lose so much time with all this bull poo." One lap before his exit, he was barking at traffic. And I said, and I quote, "Oh, come on, you're only fudging back markers." This massive internal tension creates micro tensions in the forearms and hands. It ruins his time management, physically contracts his peripheral vision into tunnel vision, and on lap 47, entering Stowe Corner, the behavioral attack and mechanical reality collided. He overdrove the entry. The rear wing failed to close completely full. Downforce had of course reduced, and he spun violently into the gravel. Beached in the stones, his immediate reaction was pure emotional stuckness. In the media pen afterwards, the fog of war remained unlifted, and I won't repeat some of the quotes that he was saying with that one. And what this makes is a perfect psychological study, looking across the very same Red Bull garage at his teammate, Isaac Hadjar. Hadjar was sitting in the exact same machinery, dealing with the exact same power unit constraints, yet Hadjar didn't experience the same performance breakdown. He stayed out of the emotional drama, he managed his systems, and he calmly secured a brilliant fifth place finish on Max Verstappen. Why? The less experienced teammate doesn't carry the immense emotional weight of a shifting baseline. His professional identity isn't threatened by a car that requires lift and coach strategy. He simply accepts the machinery. He works with it. Whereas Max has spent valuable energy fighting reality for the entire season. If Max were to walk into my clinical practice, our goal wouldn't be to dampen his fierce competitive drive. Make no mistake about that. That drive is what made him a multiple-time world champion. Instead, as a clinical practitioner, my role will be to provide a multimodal approach to move him from a state of emotional stuckness back into one of autonomy and calm mastery. We would target his thoughts, his physiology, and his actions using distinct strategies. I would look towards cognitive strategies, and we would utilize thought-stopping techniques like the clinical thought-stopping stop method to interrupt the flow of self-righteous, rigid conditions before they escalate into an on-track behavioral attack. I could also look to use Socratic questioning. I could challenge the emotional reasoning with pure empiricism, asking, what is the actual objective evidence for this thought right now, Max? This forces the brain to move from emotional panic back to objective reality. I could look to reframe the frustrating limitations of the active arrow not as personal insult towards him, but as a complex tactical test of his own skill. I could also look to deploy some physiological strategies, things like progressive muscle relaxation, to provide him with cue-controlled relaxation skills. This trains the athlete to instantly lower their physiological arousal levels the exact millisecond they notice tension creeping into their jaw or their hands, restoring their smooth motor controls and opening back up their peripheral tunnel vision caused by adrenaline. We can then use simple breathing techniques to directly regulate the fast cardiovascular patterns associated with intensity and anger. Finally, I could also look towards behavioral and hypnotic strategies. In hypnosis, we can use specific metaphors to dissolve the emotional attachment to the problem. You might use a TV metaphor. We could allow him to mentally place his frustration on a screen, get him to alter the color, turn the volume down, and systematically eliminate the emotion. Or we could use the view from above, a hypnotic tool that pulls his awareness up into a detached bird's-eye perspective of the entire circuit, allowing him to observe the race layouts calmly and strategically, completely detached from the hyper-aroused ego inside the cockpit. We can also teach habit reversal techniques, installing an incompatible physical response like using a pre-planned physical gesture or a subtle physical release the moment emotional intensity begins to redline. Providing assertiveness training that finds the golden mean between passive frustration and destructive aggression. By utilizing these tools, we assist him in replacing an unhealthy, irrational, and maladaptive anger response with a healthy, rational, and highly adaptive set of calm mastery. The caveat to all this, of course, is that Max has to want to change. He has to be motivated to change for any of this to work. Max's current situation fits well with the T.E.A.M model I mentioned earlier: trust, expectation, attitude, motivation. Does Max trust his team? Does he expect his situation to improve? Is he motivated to stay in Formula One when he's been trying out other motivating series? Let me know in the comments what you think. Your mind is the most complex piece of performance architecture you own, and you have the direct ability to manage how it runs. If you're recognizing that internal tension, frustration, or rapidly changing professional environment is causing you to overdrive your business, your sport, or your career, it is simply a sign that you need to adjust the mental strategy under the bonnet. My practice, Granting Progress, is built specifically to take evidence-based psychological frameworks and translate them into practical, high-yield protocols for professionals, leaders, and athletes. We work directly to eliminate cognitive friction, clear out performance bottlenecks, and help you maintain an analytical, calm mind when the stakes are high. To discuss how we can build a custom state management protocol tailored to your specific career or performance goals, please visit my website at www.grantingprogress.com or drop me a direct note via email, which is hello@grantingprogress.com. Let's identify the problem together. Let's rewire as a team. If you got value after today's breakdown of the grid's mental architecture, please take a few seconds right now to hit the subscribe button on Spotify, Apple, or Substack, and leave me a review. As an independent show starting from scratch, your reviews are the single most effective way to help the platforms recommend this podcast to other listeners. Feel free to leave a note in your review. Let me know what sporting rivalry, high-pressure moment, or psychological collapse you want me to break down next week. I'm Grant Wyeth. This has been Sport Rewired. Focus on the process, manage your baseline. I'll see you on the next lap.